Hello, this is another project, and this time we have a very interesting problem. The problem is Honda is cheap. This is a steel cable that ripped because it got rusty. And this cable is what drives the door mechanism. One day, come out to the car and I see this thing hanging out. Actually, my kids saw that, but who cares? The bottom line is, when I discovered what has actually happened, I was quite surprised that one of the most important, well, not most important, it's not life-threatening situation, but still very important components was cheapened by Honda or whoever designed the system. To get to this cable, you have to disassemble practically all of the internal components. And in my case, I have a rear air conditioning unit, and that needed to be dislodged. So this thing has to be freed up to get to all of the pulleys and wheels and bolts that require to be pulled out for this. Then I also found out that Honda doesn't sell these cables. Interestingly enough, this unit comes as an assembly with cables. And the cost for it, you can imagine, is astronomical. So what we have here is a big problem. I was able to find online replacement cables, so unbeknownst to me, this is a big problem. I did talk to my friend who does the body work, and he says, oh yeah, these things break all the time. You got a fairly thin cable, you got a motor with all kinds of gears turning this thing, and you have a drum to which these cables are winding. When I pull this all apart, my original cable, one of those sides was actually good, but when the motor tried to open the door, it basically jammed itself and I couldn't pull this pulley out. To get it out pain-free, what needs to be done is this back panel needs to come out, and then you take a screwdriver and you tap on the shaft. Well, there is a nut, you got to remove, and then you tap on the shaft to free up the pulley without actually trying to pull the pulley out. I didn't know how this whole thing was put together, never seen this before. So when I tried to wiggle my pulley out, the cables that were all jammed up in here, I damaged some of the threads that basically lay the cable properly. I hope that this is not a complete disaster, but only assembly will show. All right, this side is actually mounted, you can see right there. So the air conditioning unit has a bolt over here. It has another bolt over here, and there is a third one over there. So 3 bolts hold this whole unit, and luckily, or thanks to Honda engineers, it just tilts out enough to get all your stuff removed from there. The other side is much simpler. This side is exposed, and all you have to do is just take it out. The cover for the sliding mechanism is a little tricky to remove, but thanks to one of the YouTubers, I was able to follow the instructions and get it out. I'll repeat. You begin by taking out these 2 bolts. I'll show you on this side. These are star axes, and these 2, these are just Phillips or just heads. You pull out the light and the backlight. You just have to yank it out. Once you remove the 2 bolts that hold it, it just pulls out. Sometimes these things could get really stuck in there, but you just have to kind of be persistent and pull it out. Once you get these 2 bolts out, in my case what was happening is once the motor jammed inside, I couldn't move the door, so I had to take apart all of the inside first, because the door was basically stuck in half-closed position. Well, not half, closed position. It was opening just enough. Well, I'll show you. It was opening about this much. That's all I got. I couldn't move it anymore. I couldn't get to the cable to cut it because it was in there. Plus, I didn't want to cut the cable. I could have cut it from the inside. I didn't want to cut the cable for one reason. I need the old cables in their entirety, because the new cables only have some things on them. They don't have all the pieces. So to thread the new cable into the old channels, you got to have the layout of the original cables. And when I realized that it was going to be a little bit tricky to get those cables in, I thought I got to leave them intact, because once I take them apart, I have one torn cable. It will be easy to basically lose track of where what is. The car is 2014. I think it's way too early for this cable to rust and break. So I'm very disappointed at Honda. I had to remove, let me get this door. To get to the back panel, I had to remove the step first on that side, and the door was open just enough for me to be able to wiggle that out. That step holds the big plastic piece in place, so you have to have the door at least open a little bit to be able to get that out. The plastic piece, that's a little fun. Also, before you can remove the side panel, you have to remove the bottom plastic cover. And to remove that, you basically just remove these nuts. They are held in there with a thread, and there is the, oh come on, oh, it's not very visible. One bolt, and on this side here is another bolt, so you remove those 2, and there is one that's holding the back cover panel in place, just like here. That's all that's holding it, really. This needs to be removed, and then you just carefully peel apart the panel, and there are no other screws that hold it together. Now it's time to basically put the whole thing back together. The only thing that I'm not sure about is how to wind the cables onto the drum. So I'm gonna have to do some thinking here. The other thing that I noticed as I was playing around with it is my replacement cables have these cable ends that do not go into the holes, and the reason for that is they're not perfectly manufactured. You can see small wings on the sides of the when they pressed this tight, some metal came out and leaked. So this needs to be snipped off. If we compare this to the, let's see, where is the original? To the original, these are a little nicer as far as the squares go, and the originals just fall and lock right away without any tension. So let me do that. I just used the side cutters to snip away a little bit of metal, and now locks in perfectly. Goes in, locks in, so that's good. Let's see, where's the other one? Here. You can see how big those little pieces are, and I can't do it with one hand, but I just put the side cutters just like that, snipped away those little pieces of metal, and now it fits. Alright, both sides are done, and now the second one fits just fine. I would have to put the new cables into the same exact positions as the old cables. And one thing that I'm not really sure about is how many windings does this drum need? Do we have anything empty in the middle? Does it all get wound? Two cables are wound on this drum from two different sides, and then this whole thing gets placed into the mechanism, and then you have to figure out a way to get it attached to the door, and that's a tricky situation. That's one thing I didn't show. This is the piece that basically controls the whole mechanism. The cables get attached from the inside. These two screws need to be removed. The door needs to be supported from the bottom. I just put it on a little stool and give it support so I can remove this hinge and attach all my stuff that needs to be attached. This whole assembly is, in my opinion, designed poorly. Maybe this is due to saving, it's got to be cheap, it's got to be, it's gonna, I don't know, I'm not the engineer tasked with the situation. If I did it, I would have probably considered that it would break and how to repair it. Doesn't matter this time. What matters is it needs to go back together, and I'm going to have to think on how to reassemble all these parts. One concern I have is right here. We have this rubber piece, and on the old cable, if I could find it, this piece right here, this rubber piece seems to have to fit through this tiny hole and come out. So what I'm gonna do now is attempt to get this rubber piece pulled through the hole and then put this plastic on my new assembly. Doesn't look like it's a big deal. This thing is fairly flexible, fits right through that hole. Let's see if I can do it with one hand to pull it through. Oops. There. Easy peasy. Now I just have to fit the new one through this hole. And just like with the old one going out, the new one, you just basically pull it through. Not a big deal. The problem right now is I don't remember which way it was supposed to go. Okay, thankfully it's keyed. You can see there's a little key on the inside and there's a little keyway here. So the way it goes is like this. The next one is this little wheel, and at the first glance it looks quite sinister, but when you look closer at it, it's actually not that bad. The wheel, of course, will not let this whole thing go through it under there, and it seems like it's in there quite well. But after careful observations, I noticed that this center pin is actually not held in there by anything. Once you replace it, this plastic is what holds the center pin in. Thank you, Honda, for designing it as a replaceable, rebuildable, fixable component. Alright, couldn't do it with one hand, sorry. So this thing is in, and I'm gonna reassemble the black piece back, and this part at least will be, this side will be done. Nothing's easy. The new cable end is slightly different than the old original, and I just had to convince it to go in there. I hope it didn't pinch anything in there. It doesn't look like it. And I'm gonna reassemble my my end. It looks okay. So this one is the one that goes on this side. I also have to now reassemble this side. Okay, come on, cable. Actually, I don't think it's this side, it's that side. Yeah, this is for that side because it wasn't torn. This side is the one that tore up. Now I have to persuade this assembly to basically let me put it together. As you can see, the cable is fairly badly crooked. That's what happens when cable gets jammed into the mechanism. After careful observation, there seems to be a channel big enough for this metal end to go through and easily replace one cable with another. So let me do that. It's easy when cable is not crooked, but even when it's crooked, not very hard. Now we're going to feed the new cable into here. And just make sure that I'm working with the right side. Yep. And let's see if I could do it with one hand. My hands aren't. Let's see. There. All right. As you can see, there is a channel. It goes from the inside through the channel and comes out. That's the procedure for putting the cable in. Next would be to feed it through, and then we have to put it into the assembly. That's the fun part. Okay, this side is done. I'm gonna go and do the other side. This is the other side, the torn up side. All these things fell apart. This is the original. This is the replacement. I have to figure out a way how to fish this thing through here and put it on like that. I kept it all together. Let's see, as you can see, the sizes are all normal. Now I have to take this apart, fish the cable through it, and then put it back together. And again, the center pin for the pulley is easily removable. You don't have to remove the whole thing, just move it out of the way enough to get the pulley out, put your new cable in, and just fit it back in. It's easy as cake. The cable is in. Now we have to put the plastic piece on, just like that, to lock the key. Oh, before we do that, we gotta put the cable guide where it's supposed to go. Can't do it with one hand. Same thing is happening here. The new cable is slightly bigger. It goes in, but I gotta help it with pliers to put it in. I hope nothing will break. Car is not old enough for the plastic to be fragile, but if your car is old, or when you're watching this, the car is old. This is 2014 and I'm filming it in 2019, so car is about 5 years old. So the plastic is still not fragile, flexible. So I got it in there by hand, but I'm gonna push it in with the pliers a little bit. Pliers did actually help, and now it's all in. I think it's designed to be snug fit. That's why you can't push it in by hand. However, the factory one does go in and out by hand. It's a lot looser. Alright, next piece is this plastic cover that snaps in place. And again, I need 2 hands to snap it in place. This holds everything together, and then the rubber cover. The cover goes on, and you just pull these long pieces. You see, this one's visible right here. Everything's black. Okay, this little is just pull on it and it locks it in place. See, one side's locked, the other one needs to be pulled. And let's see. That one's short. Let me use my pliers. Alright. Top. And it's in place. Alright, this will be mounted from the inside, so the fact that it doesn't sit well doesn't matter. The body of the car will make sure that it sits in there just right. This side's done. Alright. Now I have to come up with a way of getting it all. Oh, yeah, I gotta put that back on. Alright. It's good that I left the cable in place because now I know which way the cable goes in there. It's really easy to mess these things up, and if you can, leave everything the way it's supposed to be. At first I thought Oh my god, I'm gonna have to open this rivet up to get in there. But then I saw that channel in there. And just like on the other side, just feed it right through. This side was a little more fun, as it didn't want to go through and there is nothing to grab onto. Then I noticed this little opening, and you could just use a small blade or knife to help that end go through. Let's see, come on. And now we are set. This side is done. Now it's a matter of figuring out how to put it back into there. And this is the scary part. I wasn't too concerned over these things. I just can't stop looking at this. Honda, please. If you used stainless steel cable, this wouldn't have happened. Even though this plastic is fairly tough, it is still plastic, and I don't know if it's a piece of stone or what caused. There was no damage, physical damage to that side, so something caused a little bit of a wear on the plastic, and over the years, I don't know how long it takes for this to ride through, but I don't think it's very long. But just like that, rotted and failed. Because of the complexity of putting all this together, I thought I'd do it on a table and lay out my pieces without having to worry about flat surface. Still don't know how to approach this yet. I am on the horns of a dilemma, and the problem is these two cables wind around these little pulleys, and they have to go onto the drum. I'm still not sure which one is on top, which one's on the bottom. And the reason for it is I'm not sure which way this pulley thinks it's opening, which way it's closing. Because if one is on top, the other one's on the bottom, the twisting is going to be different. Then, it's weird. I still have no idea what configuration this is supposed to go in. This was the biggest difficulty, because when I took it apart, I didn't note which cable went through which hole. If I did that, this wouldn't have been a problem. Actually, this is the up and down. I wish there was a way to notch something and get it properly addressed. Alright, I think the way it goes is like this. The left side, as it's facing, is going to be on the bottom. I have it on top right now, and if it's coiling it in, there is no way that this would be able to properly tension, because it has to go around a pulley like this. Otherwise, the two cables will cross and rub. So it doesn't go this way, it goes that way. That means right now, as I have it positioned, it's incorrect. Alright, as it will go tension itself, it will be in the wrong position. So this tells me that the left hand is at the bottom. This is how it's going to go in. Now, next question is, how many windings do I need to have on this pulley, because two cables are going into each other, and they shouldn't meet. So I'm assuming there should be at least one empty you know, thread for the cable, but everything here is so precise, I don't know how it's going to be on the doors. That's the reason why this whole thing is sold as an assembly. And I didn't get any instructions with this on how to put it in, so I have to improvise and think quite a bit. After putting this on, I thought maybe I'm overthinking this problem, as you can probably wind just one of them up, and then as you pull, it will wind the other one. But here's what I did. I have 3 and 3 on both sides with a little bit of an open space. That's gonna be the places where they meet, basically. And thankfully these are steel cables, so there isn't a big problem of ruining them. You just don't want to score or damage the cover, the plastic covering on them, but they're fairly easy to work with. So let me put it in and see how it's gonna look. All right, I did put it in. I think that's how it's supposed to go, but there's only one way to find out, and that is to measure the distance between cables. Let me set it up. As a preliminary, it looks okay. Looks like the distances are good. There's only one way to find out if this works. I will be highly disappointed if it doesn't, because I would have to order all the new cables, and I do not want to do that. I did notice the name here, Mitsuba, and I hope that Mitsuba can do a better job of designing this stuff in the future. Thank you very much. I thought that before I put it in, I may not need to take it apart anymore, so I opened it up and tightened this nut. And the way you tighten this nut is, the way I did it, is I put my needle nose in here and then tightened it with a wrench. Because as I was tightening it originally, the pulley started, the drum started moving, and my cables, as you can see, became a little looser. Well, we don't want that. We don't want any loose cables. Now these things are spring loaded, so when you tighten the whole thing on the car, the springs will need to be, well, they will tension by themselves, but you need to feel that tension. If everything is very loose, something's wrong. Is there either the cable's too long, or something wasn't assembled correctly. I do think that all of the threads on a drum are used. I don't have any. I don't know, it's not a good light. But as you can see, the cable comes in from this side, loops around this pulley, goes into the drum, 3 winds, ends up over here. Same thing here, goes in around the pulley, 3 winds, ends up at the bottom. And I determined that as this one pulls, as the drum rotates this way, it pulls, and it pulls on this cable. As it rotates the other way, it pulls on the bottom one, and it pulls this cable. Seems to be straightforward, but when you've never seen it before, it is a challenge for your brain. I think that if you order this from Honda, this is what you're gonna get. This is the full assembly. And mine is right now rebuilt assembly. Let's see if it's gonna work. I'm also a bit worried about my messing up that drum, and the guides are not as deep, so there are concerns that I have about my drum for the most part. And there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to repair it, fix it. It is what it is. Looks like the most tricky and difficult procedure is to put this side in. There is not much space, and there is a really big threat, so to speak, of nicking the cable because there's so many sharp metal parts. The trick that I found of it going in there, and I haven't put it in yet, is just not visible, is to lift the part cable up and slide it between the body parts. Now it's in there, but it's not in its hole yet. Nice thing that Honda did is there's a little this hanger, so you don't have to use screws. You could just hang it temporarily until you get the whole thing connected. Let's see from the outside. Well, cable's hanging out, and now I have to figure out a way of pulling so that it sits, the part that's supposed to sit in there without damaging anything. And it is gonna be tricky. I can see it there, so let's see. Either my hands are too fat or what. But I can stick my hand in there, but I can't really do much with it. But it's doable. I'm gonna need 2 hands to get this done. Oh my god, it's fun. Well, crap. That's not how it goes in. There is no way that you can make anything work fitting in through this hole. It has to go through this hole right here, and I didn't see any markings or anything that would have been left by the this is what happens when you take it apart a week ago. It's been almost a week and I forgot how it goes in. I'll try it again. I was not successful, but good thing is I didn't rip the cable or nick it, or I hope not. So putting it through the right hole